All right, and we are recording. Okay. So hello, everybody. My name is Amy Prouse. I am the Director of Student Involvement at the Texas Tech main campus in Lubbock. And today we are going to deliver the Student Organization Risk Management Training presentation to all of the vet school student organization leaders who are in the room. If at any point in time you have questions, comments, concerns, you can't hear, or you need me to slow down, please just put in the chat or raise your hand or just yell out and interrupt, okay? And I will direct your attention to the chat. I'm going to paste the link again for those who just joined. Go ahead if you care to. Please click on that link, open up the risk management post-training assessment. There is a note-taking form. Feel free to fill that out and save that for yourself if you would like. You can also complete the assessment as we go through this training. All right. So without further ado, we will move on to our first slide. All right, so our learning outcomes of this training are going to be, number one, we will be able to understand why student organizations have to have this training once per year. We will be able to recognize state-mandated risk management training topics. We'll also be able to list 5 different types of risk that we could encounter while leading a student organization. We will also be able to identify resources on campus to help manage risk. I will preface that by saying the resources you will be presented with are located on the main campus. So at that part of the slide or of the presentation is where Sarah and Brighton will chime in to ensure that you're educated on the resources that exist for you on your campus in Amarillo. And then lastly, you will be able to apply the knowledge and resources gained in this training to minimize risks within your organization. Okay. So first off, why are we here? So we are here on behalf of the individual that you see in the picture on the slide here. Our individual's name is Clay R. Warren, and Clay was a resident of Plainview, Texas, and who in 2002 was a first-year student at Texas Tech University here at the Lubbock campus. Unfortunately, Clay was involved in a pretty fatal accident. Clay had attended an organizational event in Canyon, Texas, with several other members of the organization he was a part of. But on their way back to Lubbock, that car that they were riding in, the pickup truck, was involved in a car accident. Clay suffered massive head injuries from the car accident and was transported to the University Medical Center, where he unfortunately later passed away from his injuries. To know exactly what happened is they were traveling south on I-27. The driver fell asleep at the wheel, overcorrected when he woke up, swerved off the interstate, flipped numerous times, threw all the passengers out of the pickup because they were not wearing seatbelts. The other passengers were killed instantly. Clay was still alive when first responders arrived and was transported to UMC, where he later passed away. The driver did end up living. But as a result of Clay's death, his parents, with the help of local and state representatives, authored legislation to require statewide risk management training for all members and advisors of student organizations at public and private institutions in the state of Texas, with the goal of this training to help prevent accidents like Clay's from happening again. This training took effect on September 1st, 2007, and it's known as Texas Senate Bill 1138. This law is also known as the Clay R. Warren Bill. Texas Tech University is legally obligated to provide student organization leaders and advisors with this training and the information in this presentation. So ultimately, we might think that something like what happened to Clay and his student organization couldn't possibly happen to us or our student organizations. But by actively engaging with the content of this presentation, hopefully you'll be equipped to ensure the safety and effectiveness of your org and its members, as well as take a large part in fulfilling your legal obligation as a student org officer at Texas Tech University. Because with the proper planning, accidents like Clay's and accidents of various natures can be prevented. Okay, if you have your post-training assessment up, if you have your note-taking sheet up, this is, I believe, the first element of your note-taking process. Our 8 required risk management topics per Senate Bill 1138. These are the issues that we are required to address in student org risk management training. The first topic that we will address is the possession and use of alcoholic beverages and illegal drugs. The second is hazing. The third is sexual abuse and harassment. The fourth is fire and other safety issues like the possession and use of firearms, other weapons, and explosive devices. We will go over travel. We will also go talk about behavior at parties and other events held by your student organization. Second to last, we will talk about the benefits of adopting a risk management policy by your student org. And then lastly, we will talk about disability support. Okay, second note-taking. Did all y'all get? Raise your hand. I guess Zoom, raise your hand if you got the 8 topics. I can go back if need be. Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up. I'm seeing hand raise. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and talk about, can you please go back? Just kidding. Let's go back. Sorry, friends. There we go. Excellent, Brooke. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go on then. Here's our 5 risk categories. Go ahead and jot those down on your note-taking or in the assessment. The types of risks that can occur within student organizations fall into 5 broad categories. Caitlin's iPad 2. You have your hand raised. Oh, I guess I should have followed that with, do you have a question? Sorry. Okay.
No, I don't. Sorry. I just forgot to unraise it from when you asked us to raise it.
Sorry, my apologies.
No, you're fine.
All right. So our 5 risk categories that we pretty much in every student organization, we can categorize the events and the functions that we host into these risk categories. So our first risk category is physical risk. This refers to any bodily injuries that could occur as a result of participating in an event or an activity, either directly or indirectly, okay? So directly could be like a physical injury that is sustained from a travel-related accident, or from maybe a volunteer event where you're actively engaging in the actions that are happening at that event. And then a direct physical risk, an indirect physical risk could be y'all are having a hot dog cookout and someone's not great with a grill, and they undercook the hot dogs, and then someone gets food poisoning and is throwing up everywhere, okay? Number 2 is reputational risk. This refers to incidents that lead to any type of negative publicity for the student organization, Texas Tech University, Texas Tech Vet School, and or the advisor. This could include defamation, and it's the hardest type of risk to repair. Our third risk is emotional risk. This refers to incidents that can lead to a participant who is attending an event to possibly feel alienated by the group, or this event or a happening at this event negatively impacts just the feelings of the members of the institutional community or the people at that event. Financial risk is our second to last one. This refers to occurrences that can negatively impact the fiscal stability of the student org or other organizations that support an event. This could result from having to pay for damages that are incurred by the organization or an entity sponsored by the org. Financial issues could result from a breach of contract or the canceling of an event. It could also result from just basic poor accounting and a lack of transparency with organizational funds. Facilities risks, that refers to incidents that could cause property damage or could prevent an event from taking place, such as inclement weather, a lack of space, any property damage that happens during an event. And then we also want to talk about facilities access and facilities safety when we talk about facilities risk. So throughout this presentation, you're going to notice intersections of these 5 types of risks. And it's important to consider all foreseeable scenarios and have a plan of action in place to handle a range of risk-related scenarios. So what I will ask you to do as we end the content on this slide is to be thinking about these risk categories as they apply to what your events your organization hosts on the campus where you are located. Okay. So moving on, foundations of good risk management. I will be honest, cannot remember if you have to take notes on this slide. I don't think you do. So what are our foundations of good risk management? Well, one, risk management is a university-wide effort, regardless of what campus you go to school on. It requires everyone to participate within student orgs and campus life. Establishing and sustaining a culture of risk management habits should be all of our collective goals. Culture applied to student organizations and campus life means that every staff member, student organization member, and leader and advisor needs to believe that risk is inherent in the work that we do, and we have to behave appropriately in response to that belief. Two of the most prevalent factors that cause risk management issues in student organizations are overconfidence and underexperience. So the key to having a solid risk management system is for student organizations to just practice humility. All right, I do believe you have to take notes on this one. So this is one of my favorite slides. It really conceptualizes what risk management is. We have several other brand new resources on our website that I can send to Eric, Sarah, and Brighton if they're interested in dispersing those materials to you all as well. As an office, we have really tried to focus on the conceptualization of risk management instead of just giving the content and saying go. So as a student org, there's 5 general steps you can take to manage the risks that student orgs could have in their activities. So for any event or function, you would want to start at the top of this cycle. Our first step would be that anytime we are planning an event or about to engage in some type of activity, we want to identify the potential areas of concern or the possible risks that are inherent with what we're engaging in. So in this step, our task is to develop a complete list of all activities that are taking place at the event and determine the risks that are involved with each activity, okay? So if we are going to have a rodeo fundraiser or a rodeo benefit for our student organization, we already, just by saying rodeo and knowing what all events that consists of, we know there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of risk associated with hosting that as a student organization. So it would be crucial for us to identify everything that happened, that could happen at that rodeo event. Now that's going to be a long list. So I'm already getting overwhelmed, okay? But I just picked that event because it's so easy to think about the risk that could happen. 2, we would want to then assess the possible impact of the concerns. So in this step, our goal is to determine the relationship between the likelihood that something bad could happen and then the consequence that could result if that bad thing happened, okay? So say all of the pens where we are housing our steers for the steer roping are not well put together, okay? And there's that term that we like to call pins that are just kind of janky called flexi pins. And all of a sudden, all the steers get out. That's pretty big risk. But we could prevent that by having a quality staging area for our loose livestock. Third, we want to plan. We want to have possible plans of action in place to address our areas of concern. In this step, we're asked to determine what our options are for managing all pieces of the risks. The main question is to ask what measures can be put into place to reduce the likelihood that an incident will occur, which should reduce the chance of the risk. Fourth, we want to implement and monitor this plan of action. So after we determine that we can safely proceed with our activity or with our large event, our next step is to put the risk management measures into place. Then we have the event. And then lastly, we evaluate the results of our action plan. So after our activity or our event is completed, it's time to sit down and consider the strengths and weaknesses of our plan. We'd want to analyze the details of any incidents that might have occurred during the event and analyze whether the plan was a success or not and where improvements could be made. So we should have planned in advance for if anyone participating in our rodeo benefit was injured. Naturally, we would want to have first responders on site so they could respond immediately to an injured individual. And that would be in our plan of action, is contact emergency responders, schedule an emergency responder to be like an ambulance to be at that event. Okay. And then in the event that something bad does happen, an incident does occur, we can show through our plan of action that we tried to prevent or we tried to provide care in case anything happened. Are we good with our risk management process, everybody? Excellent. Okay, first topic is the possession and use of alcoholic beverages and illegal drugs. All right, so this is our longest section. I'm gonna let you all read what's on the slide in a lot of these sections, and then I will try to engage you more in discussion of how this applies to the events that your student organization plans. So here is how Texas Tech defines misconduct relating to alcoholic beverages. Okay, I will let y'all skim over that real quick. Okay. 911 lifeline law. This law was passed in 2011, and the reason it was passed had a lot to do with the same reason our Clay R. Warren risk management bill was passed. It resulted from the death of a student. The individual you see on the screen here, his name is Carson Starkey. Carson was a first-year student at California Polytechnic University, but was originally a resident of Austin, Texas. Unfortunately, Carson was instructed to consume vast amounts of alcohol at a fraternity initiation event. Carson was exhibiting all of the symptoms of alcohol poisoning and died at the event of alcohol poisoning. And so this law was passed to try to protect underage people, underage students, individuals from dying the way that Carson did, which basically is that if you've got a bunch of folks that are under 21 and they're all drinking, this law provides some immunity to the underage individual or just the individual, whether they're under 21 or not, some immunity as far as what happens with law enforcement afterwards. Immunity applies if you're the first person to call for medical assistance for first responders. This person must remain on the scene until the medical assistance arrives, and they must cooperate with EMS and law enforcement. But the best part about this law is the fact that Section 3 of the law provides that the university will provide educational programs in lieu of conduct proceedings in certain situations. So what that means basically is if it's a student organization event and something happens that involves alcohol and someone being transported or being in trouble for alcohol, that instead of a punitive punishment by the university, we do have the authority to educate to try to prevent said incident from happening again or a like incident from happening again. Now, talking about good event planning. So we are all, I would assume, over the age of 21 in this room. Okay, great. So I don't know what your events look like, but now is the time for you all to think about the events that your student organization could host and think, is there the possibility that alcohol could end up at any event? So you're all thinking right now, just the smallest, slightest possibility, thinking that risk is inherent, right? Whether it's an alcohol-free event or not, risk is inherent. We have to understand that people are going to make their individual choices and do what they want, regardless of what rules are set in place. So is your organization prepared to handle a situation where alcohol is either planned to be there or it's not planned to be there and ends up there? That's what we're thinking about right now, okay? Which comes into the role of good event planning. All right, so when we think about goal setting and event planning, what comes to mind for you all?
Most of our events are just monthly meetings with guest lecturers, and we provide a meal.
Okay, great, great. Cody, do you think that there's a chance that alcohol could end up there?
Probably not for these specific events, no, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Are you prepared if someone from your organization were to walk into one of your business meetings with a speaker intoxicated?
Can't say I'd really know what to do, no, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So that right there, Cody and everyone else, would be what you need to be prepared. Okay, so what steps? If someone walked into your meeting and you could tell they were intoxicated, like hands down, this person is trashed. Like they've been drinking since the morning. I don't know. Okay. You know, what are the policies? This probably would involve communication with Sarah and Brighton. I don't know what your policies are at the vet school.
Yeah, I mean, they would definitely be in contact with us, and then we would work with our dean to communicate with those students about the risks that come with that. But policy wise, we follow the student handbook.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So there's your answer, Cody. Is if that happens, you be reaching out to Sarah for sure. Okay. All right. But with goal setting, what that means is basically defining the event, defining the meeting. What is its purpose? Does the purpose match the mission statement of our student organization and the goals of our student org? Okay, so Cody, it sounds like those events that you're having meet the goal of your organization. What if we're going to host a social event? Maybe a celebration, maybe a cookout. Do any of y'all host social events? End of the year celebrations?
Yes, they would, Amy.
Okay. All right. Sarah, do those events sometimes involve alcohol?
I think some of them have planned on having alcohol or hope to.
Okay. So in that case, it would be very important to pay attention to the event planning process, as well as work through the operating policies that the student handbook or the school of the SVM has set forth to allow student organizations to have an event that involves alcohol. Sarah, what are y'all's policies at the vet school?
We just follow whatever the main campus says. We don't really separate it from that.
Okay.
If there is alcohol, we go through similar processes. So it has to be approved by the provost if it's on campus.
Very good. Yes, that is how the main campus does it also, except we go through the president's office. Yeah. Okay. So that preparation probably involves meeting with you or Brighton. Okay, very good. So in that meeting, I know when I have those meetings with student organizations, we talk about the event planning process and I get them to break down their event into all of the steps. We also talk about the social risk management guide. That is basically hosting a perfect party, AKA social event. So with that, we'll move on to the social event planning guide. We have a presentation for the social event planning guide that we are happy to share. Basically, what that planning guide helps and assists with is it gives you an idea of what you need to consider during event planning at an event where alcohol is supposed to be there. All right. But it also helps you think about things to prevent alcohol from sneaking its way into the event if alcohol is not supposed to be there as well. So some things that the presentation talks about is for an event where there's supposed to be alcohol, would it be less risky to consider a BYOB event or a third-party vendor event? So are we going to allow people coming to this event to bring their own beverages? If so, how do we monitor that and keep that a safe environment for all that are participating? Or is it better for our organization to consider paying a third-party vendor to provide alcohol for us? just a quick poll. BYOB or third-party vendor, which one do we think is less risky?
Third-party vendor.
Third party vendor.
Absolutely.
Third party.
Third party, yes, yes, third party vendor. So we also need to consider member and guest management. So that's the crowd who's coming to this event, and how are we managing our guests? How are we making sure someone's not overindulging in the libations? What do we do if we see that someone might have overindulged in the libations and needs to be cut off? Member and guest management is also managing the capacity of the facility that we're using. There's that facility's risk right there, okay? Guest management is knowing, making sure that the facility that we are using can adequately house the number of people we have coming to this event. Managing the door. If we have a capacity that we cannot exceed at that facility, or maybe the organization itself has set its own capacity because it has to do with the funding, the amount of people that you can actually pay for to attend that event, then we have to have somebody who's managing the entrance door, right? But what are they managing for? They're managing ID checks. They're managing marking people that are above or under age of 21. They're also, if it's BYOB, they're managing what are people bringing into the party as far as alcohol, okay? They're making sure people do not go out and come back in, because it's really easy to keep alcohol in your car and go out to get something out of your car and then be taking some swigs, right? To get have a little bit extra fun, or go out or go out and use other substances as well, okay? And really the entrance door needs to be managed, but all of the doors to the venue need to be managed as well. Managing the bar. If you have a third-party vendor managing your bar, then you're set, because you've got TABC certified bartenders that are more than likely employed by the company that is hosting your event. So that's a lot less for you to worry about than if you were doing a BYOB event. If you're going to manage the bar at a BYOB event, that requires a lot of responsibility. It's doable. We have student organizations on the main campus who do it when they tailgate for football games. I take their word that they're good, that they do a good job at it. If they don't end up in student conduct, then they did a decent job at it. Oh no, you know? Then there's specific things that student organizations have to obtain from a vendor if they're paying a third-party vendor to provide alcohol for their event. And then, as Sarah mentioned, if you're going to have alcohol, you have to go through the what the operating policies say for having an event on campus with alcohol. Orgs on the main campus meet with our office, student involvement, and we talk about using the third-party vendor. We make sure they have gone through all of the checks and balances, and then we'll either approve or deny them. Questions about social event planning guide or planning for an event that possibly could have alcohol?
Is there some kind of form that we have to fill out to send to main campus to be allowed to do these kind of things? Like, what's the process look like if we did actually want to get a third-party vendor for an event?
Yeah, Allie, is it Allie?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Allie, that's a fantastic question. So there's nothing regarding this topic we're talking about right now, there's nothing that main campus needs to be involved in. Sarah and Student Services, the Office of the Provost at the vet school, will take care of all of that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, folks? Okay. Now, drugs. Okay. So this is how Texas Tech defines misconduct related to narcotics or drugs. Go ahead and just skim over that. Okay. All right, everybody have it memorized now? Fantastic. Excellent. I figured you did. All right, so this section is a lot more just throwing information at you than the alcohol section was. So we're just going to go over some penalties for the possession and use of illegal substances. Y'all are aware that there's legal penalties for the possession or the trafficking of narcotics. It can be anywhere from large fines, jail time, mandatory addiction treatment, probation, driver's license suspension, or possibly 40+ years in jail. I mean, that escalated pretty quickly. There's also university penalties as well. They could range from a reprimand to expulsion from the university. And these university penalties stay on your student record. That takes me back to like elementary school when they were always like, it's going to be on your permanent record. Never saw my permanent record. Don't even know if it exists. Okay, campus resources. So this is one of those slides where all of this applies to main campus. So let's take this time and let's talk about what are the resources available at y'all's campus that y'all can utilize pertaining to the safe use of alcohol, to responding to alcohol use and drug use. And this can be just throw them in the chat. Sarah, you can have your input as well.
I mean, Amy, we use the same resources. I would say to that, we also have a counselor on staff here. Many of them are aware of it, Dr. Kelly Williams, but should there ever be a concern, we immediately work with that student with Office of Students of Concern, and getting that assessed. And then we also have a program with the state, and I don't remember the title of it, but it's with the school pharmacy that students can reach out to for resources as well. So there are options here.
Great, great. So everyone in the audience, yes, Sarah and Brighton are the answer to all problems. Yes. So what, of course, go to Sarah and go to Brighton, but it's always just great as student leaders to know exactly what those resources are and to know when those resources need to be brokered in a time of crisis or a time of emergency. All right.
I'm sorry.
Questions? Go ahead.
Yes, sorry, I have a question. So this may be going back a little bit, but a lot of like the events that my club holds are after business hours, like they're at 6 p.m. And I'm just curious, like if we had a member show up who was like very obviously incredibly drunk or like seemed just like not right, I just don't know who to contact for that. I mean, like I can do my best to get him home safely and ask him to leave and that kind of thing, but like, is that something that I just wait to handle with the school until business hours the next day or the next Monday? Or is that something that I need to like alert somebody of at that moment?
I'm going to default to Sarah and Brighton.
Jenna, I would say like definitely you guys have my cell and I'll put it in the chat. If we have a student that's coming in intoxicated, we have on-campus police as well. If it gets, if we needed something, but our first priority would be to reach out to us so that we can get that student home safely, that we can contact their emergency contact. And then we would follow up with that student with these resources later. So it would probably be a bigger conversation. I definitely don't want anyone to feel like this is on their shoulders. That's what our office does, is to kind of step in and be that middle person. But if this is happening or it might happen at some point, you guys should know that you can always call us and we'll walk you through what needs to happen.
Not just that, but like also like your responsibility as student org leaders is to report these things, even when they are uncomfortable. Because I mean, we're very well aware that these are your classmates, and the likelihood of this is pretty low. But if it does occur, you are responsible for reporting that.
So on the note of reporting, do we know where we can report? Do we know what those resources are?
Yeah, so everyone is aware that we have a Students of Concern link that's been sent out. I know it's been used for honor code in the past, but that's also can be used for anything. But you guys can always email us and we can walk you through those channels as well.
Great. Very good. So on your note-taking form and on the post training assessment, if y'all have that pulled up in Tech Connect right now, you are asked to, I don't know, remember how it's phrased, but you're asked to jot down campus resources that your organization could utilize. Jot down the resources on your campus that you know are available to you as a student and to your organization. So it would not make sense for you to jot down something that exists here on the main campus, like the RISE office or the Rater Assistant Program or Student Counseling Services, right? So just jot down the resources that you know are available to you on the main campus. Are we good to go on? Great. All right, topic 2, hazing. All right, this is the Texas Tech's policy on hazing. Everybody skim over that very quick, memorize it, take a picture of it with your eyeballs. Okay. All right, so hazing. So what is hazing? We'll go over this slide real quick. Okay, some of it's a little bit redundant, but hazing is any type of physical brutality. All right, Allie has put in the chat, where can we find the link to file a report?
Allie, I can send everyone an email after this with the link and everything.
All right. So yeah, hazing is any type of physical brutality. It's an activity that subjects a student to an unreasonable amount of risk or harm, or it adversely affects their mental or physical health or their safety. It's an activity that involves the consumption of food, liquid, alcoholic beverages, liquor, drugs, or other substance. It's an activity that induces, causes, or requires the student to perform a duty or coerces a student to perform a duty. It's an activity in which a person solicits, encourages, directs, aids, or attempts to aid in engaging in hazing. It's also an activity in which hazing is either condoned or encouraged. And it's an activity that involves coercing students to consume substances. So we'll just really quick go to the kind of the application slide and talk about hazing from the applicable side of that. So examples of hazing. These are ranked from a 1 to a 10. So we can think of hazing on a continuum of 1 to 10, with 1 being the quote unquote least harmful and 10 being the quote unquote most harmful. So you see the examples of hazing on the left side of our screen here. Those are examples of what we call direct hazing. So we have running errands, scavenger hunts, name calling, dressing up in embarrassing clothing, intimidation, sleep deprivation, forced food, drink, or alcohol consumption. Why would running errands be on the lower end of the hazing continuum? What are our thoughts about that? Does anybody even think that running errands could be a form of hazing? Caitlin, depends on the errands. So what kind of errands could be hazing? If a person in our student organization who's in a position of power asked maybe like a younger member to go to the grocery store to get something, is that considered hazing? It's an errand. Okay, good thought, Caitlin. Good thought. Making someone to retrieve something inappropriate. Okay, so in that sense, maybe retrieving that something that's inappropriate does emotional or mental harm to the student who is forced to go do that errand. Yes? Possibly. Okay. So yeah, that's a good point, Caitlin. You know, just asking a person to go run and get like something that's forgotten from an event at the grocery store, that may not be hazing. But maybe asking someone to go to the grocery store and get something that would make them feel uncomfortable and them feeling like they have no choice would be considered hazing. Could also be if the errands were forced on a student. That's the key word, forced. If you're wanting someone to do something you're not wanting to do, or for personal gain, okay? So yeah, I don't want to do that. I'm gonna make them do it, but I get some personal gain out of it. Okay. All great examples, y'all. So running errands becomes hazing when there's a power differential. When someone has power over another person and you instruct someone to go do something, and it's because you have power over that other person who will be engaging in the task. Okay. So if you're an organization officer and we forget something for an event and someone needs to go to the store, it's okay to be like, hey, so-and-so, you're the only one available right now. Would you mind just running down to the store? Okay, cool. But if you're like, oh, we forgot something for an event. Where's all of our new members? Get that new member over there to go to the store. Hey, you new member, go to the store. And the reason that person's going to the store is because they're a new member. That creates the power dynamic that puts one student over another student. That could be constituted as hazing. Okay. So what you need to know about hazing is it is any activity where there is a power differentiation between one or more students. All right. So if we're thinking about kind of what we do, how we operate, how we interact with maybe our younger members, or even anyone in our organization, we need to be reflecting on if there's any type of power dynamics that will benefit the student organization. Okay. Make sense? Thumbs up on hazing? Well, thumbs down on hazing, but thumbs up that we understand what's going on with hazing. Okay, great. No thumbs up for hazing. That's definitely a thumb down. Okay. All right. So briefly, I'll just let you read over what the legal consequences of hazing are in the state of Texas. Just some fun fact about hazing law is hazing is only a state law violation in like 22 states in the country. There is no federal law that bans hazing. While we're reading the legal consequences of hazing, on your campus, if you think if you have a suspicion that hazing has occurred, where do you go to report? Anybody know where you would report a hazing incident? Absolutely. Sarah or Brighton, they're the answer to everything.
Sorry, I had a phone call. What was the question?
Where do we report hazing?
Oh, yeah. The link we'll provide. You guys remember when Dr. Descanio and Elizabeth Rowe, it's on your Blackboard on every class to report an incident about a student. That's where you'd start. But of course, if something is happening, you guys can always reach out to me in Brighton and we'll direct you there.
Very good. Y'all are not wrong with the Sarah or Brighton, the Sarah answer. Y'all are not wrong. That I think maybe human reaction is to go to a human with a concern. So that makes sense, y'all. Okay. It's great that y'all have them, Sarah and Brighton, as your resource. But as the student involvement professional, And Sarah and Brighton are also those professionals. I always want to ensure that y'all know exactly where you can report if for some reason you're not able to get a hold of Sarah or Brighton. Okay, so preventing and addressing hazing. I do realize that y'all are adults that they're of the age or over the age of 21. You are professional adults in a professional school. You are graduate students. However, we're still human and we still like to get together, have fun. And we can only control the actions of ourselves. We can't control the actions of others, right? We can't always depend on everybody else to follow rules and regulations and laws. And so it is essential for us, even as professional graduate students, to talk about how we prevent and address hazing in our student organization. So it's key that you just reflect on your organization's core values. Core values that are embodied by leadership of an entity trickle down, because we know that attitude reflects leadership, even outside of the movie Remember the Titans. I hope y'all know that reference. Anyways, yes. So a national study on student hazing actually finds the opposite of what we would expect surrounding hazing. So it's general knowledge that the thought is that hazing creates sisterhood, brotherhood, friendship. It creates a tighter bond between people. The national study of student hazing in 2008 actually found that that was wrong, that it actually divides people. It does not create any more sense of a belonging than engaging in non-hazing activities does. So don't do it. Easy. Hazing can affect all types of risk. And then we already talked about the resources on campus that we can utilize if there was a hazing present in our organization. All right, questions? Okay. Topic 3, sexual abuse and harassment. This is a lot of reading, everybody. Okay, but I am going to try to, I'm going to try to not take this section. I'm not taking this section lightly at all, but it is a ton of reading. Okay, this is the Title IX compliant sexual assault and harassment content as well. So everything is there that's included in Title IX. So sexual assault and harassment, we might most commonly think of rape. However, sexual assault falls into multiple categories. At Texas Tech, the student handbook defines sexual assault, harassment, and inappropriate touching as sexual misconduct. So sexual misconduct is the umbrella term for all sorts of sexual assaults. And then we can break down sexual misconduct into 4 different categories. Those categories are sexual harassment, sexual exploitation, public indecency, and sexual assault. But within sexual assault, there's 2 subcategories known as non-consensual sexual contact, then non-consensual sexual intercourse. Our last 2 categories that we have added to this presentation are domestic violence and dating violence. All right. Texas Tech's definition of consent is as follows. So just take a quick second and peruse the definition of consent. Okay. So when I'm presenting this information, sometimes I have to make an effort to remember that this content, the sexual misconduct content, is being presented to you as the individual, but it's more to educate you, to instill this knowledge in the others that are within your organization. Okay. So really we are learning this from a holistic standpoint in a way that we can take it back and use this language, which is student conduct, Title IX, parallel language with our membership body. So consent. Before engaging in any type of sexual activity, it's the initiator's responsibility to obtain their partner's consent, verbally or non-verbally. Silence can never be assumed to express consent, and saying no is not the only way a sexual partner may communicate a lack of consent. A partner may use verbal cues or indicate a lack of consent for any sexual activity. So a partner could use nonverbal cues to indicate their lack of consent for any sexual activity. Examples of nonverbal communication that demonstrate a lack of consent are resistance, pushing the person's pushing hands away or pulling away from a partner, a person's body going limp or freezing up, crying, wincing. Consent is also not effective if it results from using physical force, threatening to use physical force, intimidation, coercion, or incapacitation of any parties. You cannot actually consent if there is incapacitation with any party involved in those activities. Oh, there's more on the slide. I forgot I redid these slides. Okay. Okay, yeah, I put all of those slides together. Okay. Next slide regarding consent. So when thinking about consent, it's best that we think of the acronym FRIES, F-R-I-E-S, like French fries without the French part. So when we think of that acronym, we think that the F in FRIES is consent is freely given. It's a choice made without pressure, without manipulation, without being under the influence of any substance. The R in the acronym means that consent is reversible, that at any time in the sequence of sexual actions, any person that is involved can revoke their consent. I is informed, that consent is truly informed consent, that you are transparent with, everybody is transparent with those who are involved in the activities. Consent is also enthusiastic, that you should only ever engage in sexual acts that you truly want to engage in. And then lastly, consent is specific, that saying yes to one action doesn't mean that you've said yes to other actions. Ultimately, an individual gets final say over what happens to their body. Consent is never implied, consent can be reversed, and consent is always transparent. So how do we prevent and address sexual misconduct as it applies to our student organizations? Here on our main campus, these are some resources that our main campus students have access to. So real quick, let's talk about what prevention measures and measures do we have on y'all's campus to address the topic of sexual misconduct and create conversation now. Any thoughts, folks?
Okay, well, I'll just hit this one, Amy.
Okay.
Okay, so if there's any Title IX related, any incidences, any staff or faculty member is a Title IX reporter. So you instantly can talk to somebody there and they will need to report it. Of course, you guys can talk to us, but I'm going to go ahead and I was about to email y'all the incident report. This is for the incident for SVM. So you guys can also report here, but I highly encourage going through Title IX office for these type of violations.
Yes. Do y'all have representatives that are student rights and resolutions or sexual misconduct on the vet school campus, or do they default to the main campus?
They default to the main campus.
Okay, very good. So y'all would use, so the QR code that is on the screen, right, that you see, y'all can use that QR code to read on the webpage about the formal grievance process or reporting a Title IX violation. The main thing is that you as the reporter of an incident, you do not have to know if it's sexual misconduct. That's not your job. If you think that something is just off, right? An experience that you had was off, or an experience that a peer had is off, or a member of your organization is off, and they report that to you, you don't have, it's not your job to investigate that or to define that as sexual misconduct. That's the job of the Title IX office. If the Title IX office on the main campus receives a report, the first thing they do is review that report to ensure that it was sent to the correct office. If it's not a Title IX violation, the Title IX office then will communicate back to appropriate folks at the vet school to decide where that report needs to go and how that will be investigated. The same thing happens on the main campus between Title IX, student conduct, and the Dean of Students office. Okay. So like we tell students in the risk management training for the main campus orgs is, when in doubt, just report. Okay. It could be an incident report. It could be a Title IX report. But when in doubt, if you have questions of, should I report this? Just report it. Okay. No one is harmed by submitting a report. Harm happens when we know things and we don't communicate them to the people that have the resources to help us or our friends. Okay. Do we have any questions about preventing and addressing sexual misconduct? Okay. All right, we have forms of other misconduct too. The student handbook does define stalking, does define retaliation, discriminatory harassment, complicity, or being knowingly present in the happening of a crime or a violation of a student handbook. And then they also define bullying and cyberbullying as well. Okay, topic 4. We're halfway, y'all. Don't worry, the sections get shorter as we go. Fire safety. Okay, so fire is a risk in every building, all right? When we're considering facilities and physical risk, we must consider fire safety within the building in which we're hosting an event. So here are some fire safety tips to follow when planning an organizational event. Always locate exits and ensure exits are marked. Always locate all exits prior to the event happening. So all of you are very familiar with the veterinary school buildings, right? You're familiar with, Sarah, I cannot remember the name of the farm with the friendly cows.
You mean Mariposa Station?
Yes, the Mariposa Station. We're familiar with that location. We're familiar with the educational academic building itself. You all probably know where the entrance and exits are. That's great. But what happens when we are hosting an event at a facility we're not very familiar with? Then we need to locate all exits and ensure those exits are marked and ensure paths to those exits are clear. We do not ever need to exceed the maximum capacity of any facility, including rooms that are in the academic building or the Mariposa Station. Always have a fire extinguisher on hand and locate fire extinguishers in the building. Designate meeting locations away from where a fire could start. So obviously, if we're in an academic building, we need to get out of the academic building, but then where do we go when we exit the academic building? All right. That's when you need to be familiar with what the fire routes are. 2 weeks ago, we had a random fire alarm go off in the student union building on the main campus. So we all just left. We didn't know what door to go out of. We were just like, well, I mean, the closest door is here. I guess we'll go out there, right? None of us really knew what the fire safety protocol was. We all just were kind of looking down the hallway like this, going, are you leaving? Is this real? Okay, yeah, I guess I'll leave too. Let me get my purse, right? Come to find out, there actually was a fire. Crazy, right? It was the east basement elevator. It's always the east basement in the student union building causing problems. But the elevator, like the mechanics room of the elevator, actually had like a hydraulics pump or something happened, something overheated, and it started having all kinds of smoke just billowing out of the maintenance room, and it set the fire alarms off downstairs. But it took them the fire alarms went off 3 times before they actually found where the source of it was. So after that, everybody sent an email out that was like, please be familiar with the exit routes and this and that for a fire. So moral of the story, be familiar with the exit routes, okay? And also think of your friend, think of the people that are around you in emergency events like that. Some people may not handle emergency events like that well. So, if there's people standing around you and fire alarms start going off or some other type of weather alert starts going off, just grab those people next to you and leave as a group, right? Just don't leave by yourself. Just try to take as many people with you and ensure that everybody is calm and knows what's happening and how to get out of the building or to seek shelter. Okay, Firearms, weapons, and explosives. This is a riveting topic, y'all. Get ready. Okay, campus carry policy. So the state of Texas allows people to carry handguns on their person. Likewise, TTU also has a campus carry policy. Texas House Bill 910 was passed in 2016, which legalized the open carry of handguns in Texas for people who have a concealed handgun license. This law allows institutions of higher ed exceptions to create policy that fits their campus environment. Texas Senate Bill 11 allows people to carry concealed handguns on academic campuses, but again, allows leeway to adapt the law to the environment of our campus. And then on September 1st of 2021, Texas signed into law the constitutional carry law. This law modifies the 2016 House Bill 910 open carry law by allowing people over the age of 21 to either openly or conceal carry a handgun in a holster without any permit to carry. No licensed handgun, no conceal carry permit, no license to carry permit. So how does this affect Texas Tech's campus carry policy? It does not at all. To carry a handgun on Texas Tech's campus, and I do believe this applies to all campuses. Okay, great. Thank you for confirming that, Sarah. You must have a license to carry or a CHL. The weapon must be concealed and holstered at all times. You must follow Penal Code 30-6 for exclusionary zones. It is the responsibility of the permit holder to know exactly what those where those exclusionary zones are. However, you are not required as a permit holder to disclose the license to anyone other than law enforcement, and the university doesn't maintain a list of permit holders. You can only carry handguns, all right? And then the open display of a handgun per Penal Code 46.035 and 30.07, displaying it is never allowed. Exclusionary zones and requests. Exclusionary zones. So regarding exclusionary zones, the university president is the only person with the authority to declare a specific premise or venue as an exclusionary zone. So no faculty member, no staff member, no student group can exclude a specific premise or venue as off limits. Additionally, this Texas statute outside of the Texas Government Code section 411.0231 provides exclusions of certain premises on or events. Some of these are high school, collegiate, or professional sporting event or interscholastic events, including TTU sporting events, where any UIL sanctioned competition is being held, where any Board of Regents meeting is being held, in the Office of Student Conduct, where any government official governmental meeting or judicial proceeding is being conducted, or where polling is being conducted for local, state, or federal elections. There are additional exclusions on the TTU campus. Those are listed on the slide right there. I'll let y'all skim over those. If you have a request for a exclusionary zone, then that request must be sent at least 90 days prior to the date of the event to the Campus Carry Committee, which has a variety of people who sit on it. There is student representation on that committee, as well as representation from Student Affairs, the Office of the Provost, Academic Affairs, etc. But that email is campuscarry@ttu.edu. Do we have any questions about carrying firearms on our person on campus?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
So our school is a bit unique in that we often are using like just sedation and controlled drugs for our animals. And so like if I host a wet lab where we're using, we're practicing sedation or lidocaine or epidurals or something like that, and we're out like working with animals either in the lab or like out at Mariposa Station with the bovine or something like that, are there rules about having firearms around controlled drugs, or is that something that like are there exclusions in those areas that I need to let members know about?
Kinsey and Jenna. I don't know who was talking, whether it was Kinsey or Jenna.
Sorry, it's Jenna.
Okay, Jenna, that's a fantastic question. That's one that has never been posed to me before because we don't have very many live animals running around the main campus here.
Yeah.
Sarah, do you know the answer to that, or is that something we need to seek further consult on?
I would say we need to probably look at the law a little bit more, but Jenna, that's a great question. That's not something that's ever been brought up.
Okay, Sarah, I can consult folks on our campus about that as well. And you can consult folks on your campus and we'll kind of put our heads together and see what we come up with.
My rule of thumb would be no. When in doubt, no would be the right answer, but yes, we can consult.
Okay, all right, very good. And I'm gonna make a note on a sticky note real quick to not forget, so I don't forget to ask that. So let's see, campus carry. And okay, well, actually, I may have a question because a research lab is an exclusionary zone. So I guess we would need to think, obviously, if it's in a lab, like a literal lab, then that's an exclusionary zone. But the Mariposa station could be the question in this.
We also have like a surgery area in our school, and I guess my question is like my club would never use that, but does that count as a research lab, like an exclusionary zone? That kind of thing. Sorry to be confusing. I just know, I think we talked a little bit about the fact that we had like controlled drugs on campus at the last time we had this meeting. So I was just curious.
Mm-hmm. No, I appreciate that curiosity. And I think some more inquiry needs to happen about that for sure. Thank you for posing that question. Okay. Very good. All right, so moving on to active shooter. The Texas Tech Police Department does offer resources to train you on how to respond to an active shooter situation. The Texas Tech Police Department also offers in-person trainings as well. But the more convenient probably presentation for organizations would be the online presentation that they have. You can find this on the TTU PD's website. It really is a recorded active shooter presentation that you can watch just right there on the website or show to a group of people. However, there is a campus police for y'all's campus. And so if you wanted something that's in person, my suggestion would be to reach out to campus police on your campus to see what can be facilitated. Sarah, any input?
Yeah, just that we had our active shooter last fall, so yay, everyone completed that because it was mandatory. So we try to do that once a year with our new classes. So just that is covered with them.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. With all of these slides, y'all, I do try to use reputable resources to back up the advice that's given. So with this topic from the Department of Homeland Security, there's some suggestions on this slide. You've already been through the training, so I will let y'all read over these real briefly as we proceed to go into the next topic. And while y'all read these over, does anybody have any remaining questions for this section? Okay. All right, travel. How many of our organizations at the vet school travel as a group?
I know that the Food Animal Club sends a couple travel teams out.
Okay. Okay.
SAVMA is also sending a group of our officers to our symposium.
Okay. Okay, very good, Sarah. Thank you.
And several of them just went to the TVMA conference.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so we do some traveling. We do some professional traveling, it sounds like, for professional development and such. So student involvement and student org travel. Our office is always willing to meet with any student organization, no matter what campus they reside on, to talk about travel safety and planning, as I am sure Sarah and Brighton are also willing to meet with you all and help you plan your trip in the safest way possible. McKenna, yes, thank you so much. So what student involvement, the student services aspect of student travel really consists of is addressing the who, where's, what's, when's, and how's with you all. And really laying that out for you all of who is going on the trip, where are you going, what is the trip itinerary, when are you traveling, and how are you traveling, okay? I forgot where I was going with that train of thought, but you also want to assess the potential risks, identify ways to minimize risks, plan, always have a crisis plan. The bottom of this slide is for our main campus org. Student involvement does not provide financial support for student org travel because we always have organizations asking us for money, but we're not the fund money office. That's upstairs here on the main campus. They're the fund money office, SGA is. So yes, my suggestion is you have Sarah and Brighton as your resources to help you plan your travel. Plan, always have a crisis plan, always have a roster, communicate. Your travel itinerary should be very in-depth, always, okay? And your who, where, what's, when's, and how's should always be covered, okay? Do we have any questions about travel? Situations that y'all have encountered, possibly? I'm going to skip this slide because this is direct to main campus. Okay, real quick, we will talk about Clery Act reporting and student org travel because Clery does apply to all campuses that receive federal funding. So the Jean Clery Disclosure of Campus Security Policy and Campus Crime Statistics Act, the Clery Act, resulted from the murder of Jean Clery in 1986. Jean was brutally beaten, raped, and murdered in her residence hall. Her parents believe the university failed to share vital campus safety information, and they campaigned for legislative reform. These sustained efforts led to the passage of the Clery Act. The Department of Education now requires reporting and disclosure of all Clery crimes that happen within Clery geography. Clery geography includes campus, public spaces around campus, and any location where university-sponsored trips occur. So those of you who have stated that you do travel, even those of you who didn't state verbally just now that you travel, your traveling is Clery reportable. This is why you're required to submit travel information while traveling on university-sponsored trips. For us on the main campus, university-sponsored means that university funds in some way, shape, or form paid for that trip to happen, okay? If no university funds were used to pay for any aspect of that trip, then our students don't report. But ultimately, what we tell our students on the main campus to keep from confusing them is if you go on a trip with your student organization, report it no matter what. Okay, that goes back to the when in doubt, report. Okay, you're not reporting because you could be in trouble. You're reporting so our Clery administrators can ensure that they can go through the steps of the Clery process to see if there were any crimes that happened at the location or in the city that could be Clery reportable. And I know it gets confusing. Just don't worry about that. Just know that if you travel with your student organization, report it for Clery, okay? We do have a Clery travel form. That is a link on the Title IX webpage. In this form, you will be asked to put the name of your group or your student group in it, who your program sponsor or advisor is, the hotel lodging information if you stayed overnight on this trip, the event information. So why did you go? Was it a conference, a seminar, a symposium? And was it a Texas Tech University sponsored trip? Okay. Any questions about reporting student org travel for Clery purposes?
Yeah, I have another question. This is
Okay.
Jenna. So we have like the Food Animal Club has a few national affiliated organizations that hold like national symposiums and meetings and things like that. And we, as of now, don't have like truly organized like representation that we like send students to, I guess. But my question is, you know, we send out the opportunity to say, hey, if you want to go, here's the link to sign up. Do we need to advise them to report, or do they need to report it to us and we need to continue to report that? Because like they would pay their own way, that kind of thing. I guess like, I don't know like the legalities behind that, because they can choose to go or not go, and they can choose to stay wherever they want, kind of thing.
Yes. So I know how we codify that on main campus is if that was paid for out of that student's pocket, then you do not have to clearly report that.
Okay, perfect. That sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, if even so much as 1 cent of university money was used to send that student or that group to that event, then yes, that would be clearly reportable. Follow me?
Yes, ma'am. That makes sense.
Okay. Any other
When
questions?
yes, ma'am, when you say university money, are you referring to individual club money as well?
How is individual club money kept internal to the institution or external to the institution?
So
External.
yes,
Okay. So all student organizations have external bank accounts.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. If a travel event is paid for with money that is external to the institution, that is not clearly reportable. Like it doesn't have to, you don't have to fill out a clery report for it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good to go? Cool. Clery gets real confusing, so we're going to stop it right there. All right. Again, when in doubt, report. If you know for fact no university money paid for your trip, you don't have to report. All right. Behaviors at parties and other events. Okay. Basically, we all in this Zoom room, me, Sarah, Brighton, you as vet school students, you as student org leaders, we all live in a fishbowl. You are on a very, very small campus, right? You probably know the majority of people that you may go to school with at the vet school, okay? What we tell students here on the main campus is your behavior at parties and other events is going to be seen, all right? Now we're talking about that reputation risk, but that's the hardest to repair. So we all live in a fishbowl, all right? We all have work lives, we have student lives, and then we have personal lives, but we all live in a fishbowl. And Amarillo and Lubbock are very small cities, and when you've been there long enough, you start knowing people, all right? People on your campus know you. They know you to be a role model. They know you to be a leader and to be representing not only the vet school and Texas Tech, but your student organization as well. So because we live in a fishbowl, everybody can see us. They can see all of our actions. So it is imperative that when we are out and about doing our stuff and living our life, that we remember that people can see us even if we can't see them. And it's very important that we act in a way around others by ourselves that is that speaks to the integrity of the institution, the integrity of our student organizations, and our own self-integrity. Okay. I did not understand what it meant to live in a fishbowl when I was an undergrad student. Was not very smart when I was, 18, 19, 20 years old. I like to think I'm a little bit smarter now. But now I understand what it means to live in a fishbowl. So we are older grad students, so we probably understand this metaphor. So really just, remember everybody can see you, and it's how we act when we think people can't see us that really defines our character. All right. Social media. Some of your groups may have social media. Just some safety things that we recommend are make sure that the posts on these organizational social medias, make sure they align with the mission and purpose of your org. Refrain from personal views and opinions. And just know that there is significant reputational risk that comes with social media. The majority of conflict we see on our main campus organizations is drama that originates from social media or from some type of group messaging system, okay? Think about who has access to your organizational social media accounts. Anytime you have an officer transition, maybe your person who controls your social media transitions out of their position, make sure that there's password changes and just account security that takes place. It's always good practice to lay out everything in your constitution. And then also refrain from using names of members and guests in your postings. Just protect people's privacy as much as possible. If you have an event and you want to post some things on your social media, make sure that you have consent from the people who are in those photos before you post them on social media. All right, the adoption of a risk management policy. So the adoption of a risk management policy is advised. It is not mandatory. So organizations like our sport clubs who travel all the time playing sports, the Student Rec Center actually requires them to submit a risk management policy and procedure in with their constitution. But on your notes, you do have to take notes on this in the assessment and in your note-taking sheet. So in those blanks, you're going to want to write down that a risk management policy should identify all areas of risk. That's number one. It should include university policies that pertain to your campus. It should include state policies of state, local, or your national organization. It should include as many hypotheticals as possible. You should upload a risk management policy with your constitution to the document section of your Tech Connect page. All right, questions about a risk management policy? Okay. Last topic, y'all. And we're right on time. Okay, so disability support. Here on the main campus, we have the office that's called Student Disability Services. I don't know how services from at the different campuses around Texas Tech. I don't know how those work. I just know that SDS is on the main campus. Do y'all collaborate with SDS? Brighton, you're the expert.
So we do coordinate with Student Disability Services, and the person that does that is Elizabeth Rowe.
Okay.
And I think she talks to James Whitfield over at SDS.
Very good. Okay, so the main thing that we need to know as far as disability support with our student organizations is that, hang on, I have to find my actual note-taking page. It's important to be mindful of our fellow students who maybe have differences in functioning or differences in learning. That it's important to remember that many students may have differences about them that we cannot see, okay? And so events should always be accessible to all members and guests who attend. However, it's the student's individual responsibility to make accommodation requests from your student organization. Therefore, as a student org, you should strive to make it easy to request these accommodations. So under the Americans with Disabilities Act, we cannot ask a person if they have a disability. Rather, the person is responsible for disclosure of any disability. Often then, upon disclosure, we can accommodate that difference. For example, during our summer Red Raider orientation org fairs, I mean, mind you, we have them like 3 days a week for 3 months. It's exhausting, okay? We have just about 80 tables set up in the big ballroom at the Student Union building. And they're very skinny 18-inch wide tables by 6 foot long. We provide nothing but a table. We don't provide chairs or anywhere to sit. However, we have had students who have requested a chair to sit in. No matter what that reason might be, if that request comes to us, our office is going to accommodate that. Maybe you have you had a health procedure done, right? Maybe you had a broken leg, or a member is wheelchair bound, right? And maybe needs to be in a different part of the ballroom to have better access to the doors, et cetera. And so our office just makes it, like when we do the trainings and stuff, we make it very clear that if you need an accommodation, just please ask us and we will make it, and we will make that accommodation come to life. Student Disability Services can help students who not only have a disability and need accommodations, but they can also offer information on campus accessibility, disability awareness, sign language interpretation, loaning of certain assistive devices, tutoring, priority registration. SDS also provides information regarding and referral to a variety of campus and community resources. Also, SDS can answer any questions that you might have about accommodating individuals with disabilities. So if there's something that you're not sure about and you are very concerned with following ADA policy and law, don't ever hesitate to reach out to the SDS office itself or your representative on the campus as well. And then fun fact, I actually worked with Brighton when Brighton worked on the main campus in student disability services as a learning counselor, or an academic counselor. Right. Moving on to our very second to last slide, general risk management tips. We want to point out that one of the best risk management tips is just to plan. Plan ahead. Plan ahead all the time, no matter what. Planning ahead gives you the opportunity to address issues that might pop up later during a specific event. The key to managing all types of risk is anticipating what could happen and organizing plans to prevent the happening of a situation. The second general risk management tip is to keep your advisor informed about events that are going to happen. Most orgs do not change advisors as frequently as their officers do. So it's smart to include the org advisor in the planning of org activities, because the advisor is the professional individual who has spent time developing relationships across campus and can refer you to various resources across campus. Another important component is for you and your organization to train and educate new officers in the org who are charged with planning events and who will continue to run the organization in years to come. A smooth officer transition is key to determining the success of your organization and avoiding unforeseen circumstances and accidents. Lastly, reviewing the organization's constitution on a yearly basis is wise, because inherent with organizational growth is the adaptation of the constitution. So the document continues to meet the needs of the organization, its members, its officers, the community, and the organization it serves. Consistently reviewing the Constitution also prevents violations of the Constitution. So by investing in awareness strategies and focusing on any potential risks that are associated with the functioning of your org, you set up your organization for success. And chances are, if it doesn't feel right, then it probably isn't. Okay. There we are, folks. Now, I will point out a very minor, yet to me, it's quite significant. 2022-2023 Student Org Risk Management Training Post-Assessment. Y'all see that on the slide? Okay, that's the wrong date. It should be 2023-2024 Student Org Risk Management Training Post-Assessment. I don't know that I've ever heard of a quiz that has that long of a name. All right, so the link that I put in the chat at the very beginning, that's the correct link. The title on this slide of what the assessment is called just has the wrong year on it. So just ignore that, okay? Does anybody need me to put that link in the chat again? I'm happy to. All right. Only one person from your student organization needs to submit this assessment. If multiple of you submit it, that's fine too. When you enter your student organization name into the assessment, will you please just designate vet school? Okay, so we don't assume that SCAAEP is whatever type of org. Okay, our student employees are the ones who approve or deny these assessments. So it'll just help them out if y'all are able to put your organization name and then just put vet school before or after that. Okay, any more questions? All right, y'all.
Right. Thank you, Amy, so much.
You're very welcome. If y'all do have questions, obviously you can ask those questions of Sarah and Brighton. They are your problem solvers. They are your go-tos from the chat, clearly. There's my contact information, my email, and the student involvement's office phone number. All right. And with that, we will stop recording.